In Quadrant 7 of the dead zone near the Endress Drift, there orbits a moon that was never supposed to exist, Ovrion-6. Deemed a ghost coordinate by Federation charts and left off most deep-skin stellar maps, it was believed to have been consumed by its parent planet over a millennia ago. But it returned not as rock and ice, but as something else. The distress beacon that first lit up from its pole was faint, its frequency ancient, long thought obsolete. It carried only 4 words: they never stopped digging. When the signal reached the expeditionary crews aboard the Leviathan-class ship Pathfinder 9, no one hesitated. Alien anomalies in dark systems often meant technology, and technology meant leverage. The crew, mostly warborn veterans and xenominers, had seen every kind of horror the Void could muster, but Ovrion-6 would rewrite their idea of fear. The moment the landing pods pierced the low orbit and touched the cracked surface of the moon, they realized the ground was hollow, unnatural, and humming with a sound too symmetrical for geological activity. What they stood upon wasn't a moon. It was a shell. And something beneath was awake. The mining unit Ironjaw made the first breach. A 3-meter bore that was supposed to lead to subterranean crystal formations. Instead, the drill fell silent 3 seconds in. Then the sound feed erupted in a chorus of tones, like metallic whispering. Specialist Arjun Lee, monitoring the audio logs, reported what sounded like deliberate code embedded in the noise. Binary pulses layered over deep guttural harmonics. Not language, not machine chatter. Something older, mimicking both. He tagged it Sentient Echo. The core scanner showed hollowness for over 60 kilometers beneath, with artificial grid patterns every 200 meters. It wasn't a natural cavern. It was a structure, layered, organized. Alive? The crew descended using thermal-guided pulleys. The moment boots touched the inner walls, the lights dimmed across all equipment. No magnetic interference. No heat surge. Just darkness that absorbed intention. Commander Rios ordered only 3 to proceed deeper: herself, Arjun, and a deep-tech observer drone. At 42 meters, the walls began to move, not shifting like collapsing rock, but inhaling like lungs. The drone captured only one clear image before freezing, a mural of a humanoid figure kneeling before an open void, its skull fractured and something emerging from within. They were not the first to awaken what lay beneath, but they might be the last to walk out. Deep inside the second layer of the moon's shell, the team discovered a door, if it could be called that. It was nearly a kilometer tall, carved into the very fabric of the subterranean wall, with an inscription glowing in a color not native to any known light spectrum. It was red, yes, but with a vibrating undercurrent that seemed to speak directly to the nervous system, bypassing the mind. Arjun stared too long and collapsed into seizures, mumbling numbers. The door wasn't closed in the traditional sense. It was asleep, as if dreaming. Commander Rios attempted to scan its composition, but the data feedback looped endlessly, creating recursive paradoxes in the ship's AI. A backflow of code spilled into the mainframe, unintelligible symbols overriding core systems. "It's rewriting reality protocol," whispered Tech Officer Mila when she saw the ship's life support dashboard flicker with unknown glyphs. Above, on the surface, the Pathfinder's orbit began to decay despite gravitational stasis, pulled subtly downward by something it could not detect. Every minute near the structure seemed to accelerate entropy. The door began to pulse, not mechanically but rhythmically, matching the heartbeats of the nearby crew. It was waiting. Not locked. Not sealed. Waiting for acknowledgement. The door eventually opened without a command, without force. It simply unfolded like the petal of a flower remembering sunlight. Beyond it lay a corridor longer than any mapping tool could measure, and yet when stepped into, it felt short, as if space compressed on entry. The walls were a fusion of organic material and unknown alloy, bioluminescent veins pulsing in sync with the team's footsteps. Every movement created echo replicas, faint silhouettes that walked just out of sync, not reflections but rehearsals. A memory. Arjun, still shaking from the seizure, said he recognized the structure. "I've seen this in dreams as a child before I could speak." Commander Rios dismissed it, but the thought gnawed at them all. How could this architecture embed itself into human subconscious generations ago? Mila's equipment began registering high brainwave activity in the unconscious range, as if the walls were emitting thought frequencies. Something here wasn't built just to contain, it was meant to teach, or perhaps overwrite. A distant hum rose behind them, not like an alarm, but a lullaby played backward. The corridor ended in a chamber that looked like a tomb, but the slab in the center was not for burial. It was a cradle, and inside, a shape moved. The moment they stepped closer to the cradle, the chamber responded, not with alarms, not with defense systems, but with warmth. An invisible pressure settled on their bodies, like walking into a childhood memory buried too deep to recall. The shape inside the cradle was not fully formed, not entirely organic. Its body shimmered like liquid wrapped in neural wire, semi-humanoid but clearly not born from any natural evolution. It breathed, but without lungs. It moved, but without muscles. Commander Rios raised her weapon, but it disassembled in her hands, atom by atom, gently undone by the surrounding air. The chamber didn't allow violence. Arjun reached out, not by choice but compulsion, fingertips trembling as he hovered above the translucent barrier. The moment he touched it, every light in the structure dimmed, and then a pulse exploded outward, not light, not sound, but memory. The team was forced into shared hallucination. They stood suddenly in alien cities suspended in the void, saw the rise of civilizations that never knew war, heard music played by stars shaped into instruments. A billion lifetimes of peace, followed by silence, then terror. A rift. A betrayal. Not by their own kind, but by visitors, beings from a dimension beyond decay, beyond entropy that fed on timelines. The cradle's occupant was not a prisoner. It was the last seed of that civilization, not meant to survive, but to witness. To remember what was lost and perhaps begin again. The hallucination ended abruptly, like waking from drowning. Mila vomited blood. Arjun collapsed. Commander Rios dropped to one knee, whispering, "It's not a weapon." It's a warning. As the team tried to recover, the murals along the chamber's walls shifted. They moved not like animation, but like a language rewriting itself in real time, adjusting to the presence of human minds. The first pattern showed Ovrion-6 as it once was. A temple moon orbiting a binary star system that no longer existed. It had been moved, not by propulsion but through spatial folding, ripped from its original place in the cosmos to hide its most sacred relic, the seed. The second mural revealed the visitors, geometric, formless beings that devoured possibility. They didn't consume energy but probability, ensuring that peace, invention, and hope never reached their full expression. These entities seeded entropy as a form of domination. And then the final mural, Earth. Not as it is, but as it might have been, cities of light, oceans of understanding, minds united in art and exploration. And yet, across the mural, a dark thread wrapped Earth in the same choking grip as the lost alien worlds. The message was clear: the same force that ended them had found humanity. Mila stared at the mural in horror. "We didn't discover this moon," she said. "It let itself be found. Because we're next." Commander Rios stepped back, breath caught. "No," she whispered. "Because we're different." The seed was awakening because it detected something in the human genome, a mutation, a spark, a resistance that hadn't been present in its own creators. The murals stopped shifting. The chamber fell still. A question had been asked, and Earth's answer was waiting. The ground trembled not with violence, but with decision. All around the surface of Ovrion-6, massive obelisks burst forth, silent, symmetrical, spaced like sentinels in a celestial ritual. Each was etched with the same pulsating glyphs they'd seen in the murals, but now they emitted low-frequency tones, harmonizing across kilometers, syncing like neurons in a brain waking from coma. Above, the skies darkened, despite no atmosphere. Aurora-like distortions warped the stars as if the void itself were reacting to what was stirring below. Back in the cradle chamber, the seed began to rise, not by levitation, but as if being called upward. Its form restructured in midair, limbs elongating, semi-solid strands of thought and memory weaving around it. Mila, still weak from the hallucination, whispered, "It's transmitting, not data, a path." The alien being wasn't a weapon or warning. It was a bridge, crafted from the last remnants of a culture that had once transcended time, now offering humanity a chance to avoid their fate. Commander Rios tried to connect her suit's neural interface. Diffused instantly, unwilling to wait for permission. In a flash of alien clarity, she saw Earth in its present state, fragile and distracted, and Earth in its potential future. Colonized not by ships or drones, but by the very entropy that destroyed Ovrion's creators. The seed was offering a third option, but it required trust, and evolution. Rios heard the obelisks chanting in a language she shouldn't understand, her name, not as a person, as a signal, a vessel. The moon wasn't asking for permission. It was preparing for integration. Ovrion-6 was a launch pad. Earth would either ascend or be consumed. The integration was not gradual. It was instant, violent, yet strangely tender. The seed reached into Rio's body and mind like light passing through glass. No tearing, no resistance, just absolute synchronization. Her pupils dilated. Her skin glowed with an inner circuitry that hadn't existed moments before. Mila screamed her name, but Rios was no longer just Rios. She stood upright, levitating inches above the ground, her voice layered with something not hers. Not AI, not translation. It was the language of gravity spoken through form. We were the witness, the voice said through her. Now we are the path. Her memories remained, but they were now seen through 1,000 lenses. Not erased, but expanded. She knew what the seed knew. The visitors, the entropics, were already seated in human politics, in whispers of war, in dreams of profit. They didn't come with ships. They came through thoughts, through fear, and Earth had already begun bending to their design. But the seed had rewritten her neural matrix and with it ignited a latent trait in the human genome, the ability to perceive the distortion. Mila and Arjun watched in stunned silence as Rios reached out and touched the wall. It folded open, revealing an alien interface pulsing like a heartbeat. I can see them now, she said, voice trembling, glowing. They're already here, and we were never meant to fight them with weapons. Above, the magnetic storm settled. The obelisks pointed toward Earth. Countdown initiated. Back aboard the Pathfinder 9, systems flickered erratically. The AI core began translating unknown glyphs on its own, unaware that it was no longer interpreting language but being rewritten by it. The ship's starboard side unfolded like metal origami, forming extensions that weren't part of its original design. The obelisks had tethered to its hull, not with cables but through quantum handshake, meshing Earth-made alloys with constructs billions of years older than human history. The main screen pulsed. Earth appeared, but not as a static planet. It flickered between timelines. One full of war, pollution, and ruin. The other radiant, interconnected, its cities powered by silence, not combustion. The seed, now fused with Rios, had become a kind of translator for Earth's possible fates. Mila stared at the screen, tears streaming, heart collapsing under the weight of choice. Are we supposed to decide this? She asked. No, Arjun whispered. We already did. When we came here, the ship began transmitting not a message but a frequency, a correction. Planetary antivirus. The obelisks amplified it, sending pulses toward Earth's upper atmosphere. Subtle enough to go undetected by satellites, yet powerful enough to reprogram the subconscious of billions. Not control, clarity. Rios, still glowing, now understood her purpose. She wasn't meant to return. She was the final firewall, and her presence aboard Earth would signal war. Instead, she would remain tethered to the moon, orbiting quietly, becoming the custodian of the last warning. Earth was being offered a final breath. What it chose to exhale next would define everything. Commander Rios rose into the air, cradled now by strands of living light that wrapped around her body like threads of memory. She no longer resisted. The transformation had gone beyond skin, beyond neurons. She had become the seed's new core, not possessed, not consumed, but chosen. Her mind was a confluence of timelines, her thoughts echoing through the obelisks in harmonic frequencies. The chrysalis took shape, a cocoon not of protection but of amplification. Inside, her presence would continue decoding the entropic distortions, relaying corrections across every satellite path, radio signal, and dreamscape on Earth. Below her, Mila and Arjun stepped back, unsure whether to grieve or bow. Rios opened her eyes one last time. Tell them I saw what we could become. And it was beautiful. The chrysalis sealed. The chamber dimmed. And Ovrion-6 shifted, no longer a silent moon, but now a beacon. Its orbit stabilized with mathematical precision, aligning with Earth's electromagnetic field like a tuning fork. Earth would feel nothing at first, but the dreams would come. The clarity. The impulse to build instead of destroy. The urge to unify instead of divide. They would think it their own awakening. And in truth it was. The seed had only ever revealed what already slept inside them. It was up to Earth to keep it alive without warning. Across continents and time zones, people began to stir from sleep with the same sensation, as if they'd all dreamed the same thing but could not recall what. Children woke up whispering songs in languages they'd never heard, artists drew symbols they didn't understand, and engineers, coders, biologists felt sudden impulses, equations half-finished now made perfect sense. Neural theories refined as if whispered from within. World leaders dismissed the phenomenon as mass psychosis triggered by solar storms. But the truth rippled in silence. The correction signal from Ovrion-6 had begun phase alignment with the human subconscious. Not control. Not possession. Permission. Minds most open to change were the first to receive not instructions, but invitation. In labs, in temples, in deserts and dreams, scattered individuals began writing the same sequences of numbers. They called them visions, symptoms, miracles. But the seed had no dogma. It only amplified what was already there. And yet, in the shadows, the entropic forces moved too. Human fear reacted, retaliated. Media flooded with conspiracy. Governments activated defense protocols against unknown psychological interference. It was expected. The old systems built on entropy would resist clarity to preserve themselves. But clarity did not seek to overthrow. It sought to evolve. Back on Ovrion-6, Mila and Arjun watched Earth's energy signatures change not through satellites but through the subtle flux in the quantum field. Earth was entering its divergence. A fork in the road where it would either transcend entropy's influence or be devoured by it. No war. No fire. Just a choice disguised in billions of tiny actions. The seed and Rios within waited not in hope but in readiness. Humanity's test had never been technological. It had always been spiritual. What would Earth do now that it had heard its own voice? Time passed, not in years or days, but in outcomes. Ovrion-6 no longer pulsed violently, nor did its obelisks flare with alarm. They had settled into rhythm, becoming permanent structures of balance, not interference. The seed slept within Rios, but her consciousness hovered just above Dream, gently tethered to humanity's thoughts as they evolved. Earth didn't change overnight. It fractured at first, as clarity often does, forcing old systems to confront their irrelevance. Some countries banned thought synchrony as invasive ideology. Others formed new societies around it, open to exploration of the self not as isolated, but part of a larger, living signal. And slowly, very slowly, entropy lost its grip. Not because it was defeated, but because it was no longer fed. Fear didn't vanish. But it became recognized not as enemy but as echo. The entropics tried once more, through dreams, through division, through false prophets. But their signals could not anchor where the truth resonated louder. The seed had planted its last message, that evolution is not a leap of science but of intention. That the final war is always within. Mila and Arjun remained the only humans ever to set foot on Ovrion-6, living in a chamber surrounded by silence that sang. The Pathfinder 9 had become a relay orbiting Earth's outer perimeter, camouflaged behind electromagnetic noise, broadcasting nothing but watching everything. And Ovrion-6 continued to orbit, quiet, subtle, waiting not for ships but for civilizations ready to hear. For those willing to look within their own chaos and say, we are not afraid of who we could become. The abyss was never beneath them. It was within.